Hi, this is Year Unknown, a game I've been developing on and off for a couple of years now. Things are getting to a pretty good state, so I figured I'd try my hand at a devlog of sorts. For this devlog, I'll run through some of the experiments and iterations that led to this game's current form. I've never done a devlog before, and I'm not sure if I'll do more in the future, but we'll see how this goes. So before I even finish my last game, Subdivide, I know that for my next big project I want to do something with narrative, something I unfortunately had to push aside during that game's development. I had some ideas for the story, but what I really needed was an interesting way to tell that story. I didn't want to just make another RPG, visual novel, or walking simulator. Nothing against those genres, I just wanted to see if there was something more unique I could do. So my first idea involved what I called books. These books would store some information about something, and to read it you had to plug it into a terminal. This was kind of interesting. Making these abstract bits of info into physical things made them a lot more fun to interact with, but you can probably see why this hit a dead end. Mechanically, it's really no different from just collecting something and reading it. It might make a cool addition to a larger game, but it really couldn't stand on its own. So logically, if something doesn't work, why not do more of it? So I put 2 slots on the terminal. The idea was that each book could contain information on a certain topic, and putting them together would give you some information about the overlap of those 2 topics. You can probably see the problems with this as well. Accounting for every combination would be a lot of work, and I couldn't think of many uses for it anyway. It was just way too much work for something that really wasn't that interesting in the first place. So after these 2 prototypes fell kind of flat, I went back to the drawing board. Or rather, I remembered that I played Outer Wilds and that an integrated story and gameplay far better than I could ever do. Seriously, go play Outer Wilds. But maybe there was something I could take from it. Instead of trying to beat Outer Wilds at its own game, maybe I could do something that it doesn't do. And one thing Outer Wilds doesn't have much of is an immediate story. What I mean is that most of Outer Wilds is about figuring out past events that are fixed in place. You don't have much in the way of meaningful dialogue options that change the outcome of the story. I mean, there are multiple endings, but only one real ending. So what if I could find a way to tell a story that happened in the past, but in the process also develop a story that's ongoing, and that the player has agency to change? If that sentence was a bit confusing, I'll break it down. I want the cool discovery and exploration stuff of Outer Wilds, and also the choice-based stuff of an RPG or something like a Telltale game. I ended up keeping the terminals from the previous prototypes. They give an easy way to provide story through text, and they act as pretty good points of interest. But instead of books having information, each terminal has its own information on it. Except the player can't access that information directly. There's an AI, not an actual AI, they're dialogue written by me. Anyway, this AI can see the information on the terminals directly. For the player to get the information, they have to talk to the AI first. Since the player is conversing with a character, that lets me add choice. But in the process, the player gets to uncover information. And I could even go farther than that. What if I add another AI and give the player the option between the 2? Now, to really get at the truth, the player has to take into account each AI's biases and motivations. For instance, what if only one of them reveals an important fact? Are they lying, or is the other admitting the truth? I was starting to see a lot of potential for this idea, so I decided to go with it. Things definitely didn't go smoothly from here though. My first iteration with this idea was pretty bad. It was completely linear, so the choices weren't really coming into play. But the worst issue was that I had no real way to gate the player's progress. They could just walk past the terminal, completely skipping important information. I had to make sure that they get the information they need without putting a locked door behind every terminal. So to solve this, I switched to a more open structure, with several areas that had one big gate or bottleneck to ensure that the player knows enough for the rest of the game. This gave the player a bit more freedom to explore and makes writing a lot easier for me since I don't have to keep adding different dialogue branches in case the player misses something important. For now, I'm pretty happy with this concept. The game of course still needs a lot of work, but hopefully no major restructuring at this point. Like I said, I don't know if I'll do another one of these, but if you're interested, let me know. I'd also do the whole like and subscribe bit, but full disclosure, if you subscribe, I can't promise that any future video will be at all related to this one. In any case, I hope you enjoyed, or at least found it interesting.